Welcome to the Sunflower Conversations, where we explore the hidden disability sunflower and its role in supporting people with hidden disabilities.
We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the lands on which we record, and especially to those who may also be living with a disability. Welcome to another episode of the Sunflower Conversations, where we will explore a variety of non-visible disabilities, the way in which people experience their disabilities, and discover the opportunities for society to make access and inclusion improvements that benefit everyone. Hi everyone, my name is James Dunn and I am your host. And like many of the guests on the Sunflower Conversations, I also live with disability, including myalgic encephalomyelitis, more commonly known as chronic fatigue syndrome, and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
When some days get a little tough, we'll help you find that sun and lift you up to get you through to your sunflower bloom.
On today's show, I'm joined by Fiona Heron. Fee is an organisational design expert with over 18 years' experience working in HR, with a particular focus on inclusion and large-scale people initiatives. Fee lives with the condition Vitelliform Macular Dystrophy, or VMD, and her experience navigating the condition has driven her passion to advocate for improving accessibility and inclusion, both in and outside the workplace. Fee Heron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James.
I want to firstly take our podcast community back to the beginning of your disability journey. You were born with VMD, but you were not initially diagnosed with the condition until you were 8 years old. You first moved to Australia. Can you tell us about what VMD is and also about the diagnostic and personal identity journey that you've been on since you were first diagnosed?
Thank you so much for saying what VMD stands for. I still really struggle to pronounce it, if I'm honest. It's part of a genetic condition I have, which was discovered by someone with the surname Best. So my whole life I've known I have Best disease, which is not at all the best. But yeah, that really sort of came into my whole life in terms of obviously my memory of it. I was born in Scotland to Aussie and Kiwi parents and moved permanently to Australia when I was 8, sort of started to see the family optom. And my recollection of that time was I knew there was, they describe it as something like an egg yolk in the eye, and that was this genetic condition. It was confirmed I had this from my dad. And the quote that I recall that sort of was my main anchor to what this meant was, Fiona might need to sit at the front of the class to read the blackboard at uni, was all I was told about it. And really then when in my 20s, it probably was then I sort of started to unpack that quote and was like, okay, yeah, sitting at the front of spaces is a bit easier to read things. Distance isn't really my strong suit. And then sort of as I've learnt about it now, the egg yolk is how VMD shows up and how it's sort of identified. I was just sort of reflecting on hearing my dad talk about it as a Kiwi. So we always called it Bist's disease, which is my terrible attempts at a Kiwi accent. But yeah, I really just didn't know what that meant. And so we were in a small town in far north Queensland, so really, and in the 90s, so really not talking about what any type of vision loss could be. It was in that time where disability was a real binary visible thing. So through sort of 20s and 30s, I tried to wear glasses. They helped a bit with sort of magnification and really never got to 2020. And then it was not till I've been trying to work out exactly the timing. It's a bit sort of tricky to work out, but really I had an incident with a rideshare driver, which I can now identify was real ableism, but during that, I was really struggling to read something and they were unfriendly about it, I'll just say. That's when I really started to realise there's something more going on here. This isn't, why can't glasses, and that really, so that's probably only in the last 10 years, I would say. So it took till my early 30s to go, what is this? I know I have Best, but what does that mean? So I finally connected in with a specialist who, confirmed that, but actually then started to give me information like this is a progressive disease. It's progressed since you were 8, not a lot, but it has started to hit a progressive point, which is another indicator of Best disease. It's sort of a lifelong, very slow progressing, but in that way that only medical specialists can, that was very blunt. And so it was sort of almost like a re-diagnosis at that age to then realise, okay, I have this thing, I have to come to terms with that. What does that look like? I had never met anyone or talked to anyone who openly shared they were blind or low vision. I didn't know what low vision was. I hadn't heard about that until probably, again, in that last sort of 10 years of life. And that low vision is a broad definition of categories of vision loss. And I have moderate low vision. I'm on the tail end towards severe low vision. And then, that's got quite a lot of vision scope in it before blindness. That's, to me, I think, such an unknown part of vision loss. Low vision is this quite big category of vision loss. And I realised, I fit into this moderate category. There's a lot between moderate to severe, then severe to legal blindness. But that was really when I started to go, oh, low vision is a disability. I'm not disabled enough. I'm not, I need to wait. I'm not invited into low vision spaces, starting to think about, could I work with Vision Australia, who are for blind people living with blindness or low vision? And it just sort of triggered a lot of that identity of, I haven't lost enough vision yet, which feels strange to think back on and reflect on. But, really when I took the time to think about that, the fact it was progressive as well, and part of why I have become really vocal about low vision broadly and disability inclusion is that anyone with a progressive condition, it's also about setting myself up for the future. So getting comfortable with this identity, tools that I'm using, doing all that now before it's a really stark challenge. I saw my dad and his brothers go through that. And I have definitely felt that in my career where I'm just have referred to it as that white knuckling through life. And it's not sustainable. It's not a good space to be in. So I'll cap it at explaining where I'm at today with my vision loss to kind of talk that through. I have 40% vision loss in my right eye and 60% vision loss in my left eye. So when you think about visual acuity 20/20, or in Australian terms, 6/6, that's sort of the scale, and that's where we sort of see the categories for vision loss. And the macula is the central focus point on the eye. So if you think of eyesight like a camera, my central vision's on blur, my edges are more crisp. It only affects the macula. And yeah, I'm on that sort of moderate border of severe low vision. And there's a big lot before it gets to legal blindness, and it's unknown if I'll ever get to that point.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Fee. And I think for myself, I didn't probably recognise before meeting you that people with low vision weren't aided by having corrective lenses. And it's something you probably hear a bit, I guess, from people.
And, there's so much wonderful technology to support eyesight. There is lots of people, if you didn't have the benefit of any glasses, contact lenses, etc., would be in low vision or legal blindness. I've learned in the last few years, Jake Gyllenhaal is legally blind without contacts that he wears. That's fascinating to me, and it makes me think about just the potential for temporary disability is so much larger than we give space for. If somebody loses their glasses and that kind of thing, you might be in a category of low vision. But yeah, for low vision, formally, they will do as much as possible. So I have worn glasses on and off when it could help a little bit. But what that makes, when you hear people talk about, that community, it's that they sort of, nothing corrective that they can do to that. This is a broad statement, and I don't think I know enough about it. There's probably people out there who might identify as low vision who can use a little bit. It's really complex. Our eyes are really complex things. So it depends what vision they have, what part is deteriorating or impaired in some way. It's quite varied. I think that's an important part with vision. It's not a binary, like blind, not blind, or that kind of thing. It's not, it is sort of up to the individual, but I've encountered a lot of people who would be in that category of low vision, particularly that moderate part where there's so many things that can help us, but it is a real, mostly mental barrier to identify with that and seek that help and get to learn how to use some of the tools and things. But having been through, that's been the last 2 years of my focus, and it's much better on this side of it, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. And that variation of experience, I think, is reflective across the whole disability community. There's obviously hundreds and hundreds of different disabilities or health conditions that people can have.
Yeah.
And within those, like you're saying, there's also huge variability. It really struck me when you were saying there that you felt for a long period, am I disabled enough? And that's definitely a question I've asked myself a lot over the years, and I'm sure a lot of people have. And as you're alluding to, if you need help in some way, then the answer to that is yes. And I think people should feel comfortable seeking the help that they need.
And that it's not a bad word. Like, we all will face some type of barrier at some point. And it's, I often will try to frame it as, do you find something disabling about this environment? Because if you frame it that way, the answer is much more often going to be yes. And it is a tricky thing with identity. I give a lot of time and space to people to work through with that. But because it is seen, it definitely through my growing up, it was sort of held for people who had a lot of physical conditions and visible disabilities, or much more, what's represented in media representations, like just those sorts of commonly known things, like just the breadth of disability or environments that can be disabling and attitudes. I think that's a really tricky one. And for anyone who might listen to sort of go, oh, I'm scared to call myself, or for me, I was like, oh, okay, someone's got to invite me into this community, or if I get NDIS funding, maybe that will be my card to the disability community. But, I'm still not NDIS supported. And so, you have to just really do a bit of that internal work to embrace that. It's a very welcoming community.
I think a lot of people will be able to relate to your experience and that journey that you're on. I certainly can. A question we're going to ask all of our guests on this season of the podcast is what we're calling the Mythbuster question. So what is one myth or misconception you find that people have about people with low vision?
So I mentioned it before about that sort of binary of vision, blind, can fully see. For me specifically, the myth, and this is part of hidden disability, is that just because I'm looking doesn't mean I'm seeing. So, personally for me, because my peripheral vision is quite good, I move my eyes a lot, and I have like blank spots in my macula, in my central vision. So I move around my eyes a lot to see my full surroundings. I can see where there's good contrast. I can sort of see what direction to look in. I can follow voices. I understand social cues about where to look. But just because I'm looking at somebody, or you might be in my line of quote unquote sight, doesn't mean I'm seeing you. That has come up a lot where I'm sort of looking in a certain direction, and it happens at events where I'm looking around and then there's a sort of a flash. I'm like, oh, I was accidentally like looking straight at a camera person and they thought I was looking at them for a photo, and then there's just awkward, just stunned photos. Or people waving at me from across a building comes up a lot at work, and I was like, I can hear a voice, I can understand that there's a person waving, but I have absolutely no idea who they are. So I think people get a bit tripped up with people living with vision loss, and that hidden part of it is that, well, they're looking, so they must be able to see it. So a lot of that is masking.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably counterintuitive for a lot of people to think that if they're in your central vision that you wouldn't be able to see them.
Yeah.
It happens sometimes that people are sort of staying right in front of you and they probably think they're doing the right thing by getting right into your central vision, but that's actually worse for you.
Yeah, and I do pick up a lot of things on the peripheral really well, and so people get thrown when I'm like, oh, so-and-so's over there, because I can either see it in my peripheral or I pick up a lot of things other than the person. I can recognize people by the cadence of their walk, often their voices, or if I've seen them already, I know what they're wearing. I can see that sort of thing. So there's a lot that I can do. It's the central one, or if it's a lot of noise, I can't always pick up voices. So it's one of the things Vision Australia taught me was to sort of think about asking people to say their name, and that's a real hard thing for people to remember. I do get that, but it's such a relief, walking around the office. If you walk past me, you're like, hey Fee, it's James, I'm immediately included in knowing who you are and able to pick up in that sort of chat, and that's so difficult to do that. So it's but there's this sort of misconception of if I say hi really loudly or get in right in front of your face, you'll know who I am. It doesn't always work.
Yeah, I can see that would be very challenging. So you've mentioned a few things, but what are some other daily challenges and barriers that exist for people with low vision, including in the workplace?
And it's interesting with a bucket like low vision because it can really vary. But I think on top of the sort of looking but not seeing thing, that social setting, that's a barrier for a lot of people, whether it's the noise or identifying people. Networking's really hard for me with name tags, but I have found some positives in that. Probably the thing for anyone with low vision is the gap to accessing assistive technology. It can be very expensive, let's just say, but having worked through that, understanding how a screen reader can help me, I use a combo magnifier and reader that makes me able to work so independently, and back to, earlier in my career where I didn't have this level of vision loss, but understanding what that was, getting access to it, and then also having the right computer that can host that, knowing what to expect in a meeting and what tech I need to bring, if sort of rolling into an event and all of a sudden there's a bunch of visual things and I don't have that heads up to be able to bring tools with me or have pre-read it. So it's just sort of that accessing the information in the workplace that you need. There's so much technology that can help, but the price of it and the awareness of it, there's quite a big gap in that, which I think is really challenging for a lot of people to think, what adjustments they might be able to ask for, or just things that might be able to help themselves. There's quite a big gap there. It's very challenging.
Yeah, and as you said, that price barrier would be a challenge for a lot of people and some organisations. And it sounds like, you've just rattled off sort of 4 or 5 things there. So it sounds like there's a lot of things that need to line up for you to have a good experience in that workplace environment. So you're really hoping that you're able to put those things in place.
And I will say there's a lot of free apps that is a really great gateway to just testing out, like, would that help? Because it's so different what will and help. I prefer a lot of dark contrast settings and those sorts of things, but other people need particular colour settings or prefer a lot of really bright light. So there's inherently already just a lot to explore, but there's a couple of free apps, anything that's like magnification or that can read stuff out to you. It's all the technology that gives us like voice to text and those sorts of things. It's even just built into most workplace platforms have some type of read-aloud function in your web browser or that kind of thing. So, there's lots of people that benefit from audio learning versus reading. So I would just recommend trying some of those. And then there is some pathways in Australia to get some access to that. There's a company called Job Access that I was unaware of, like a government body called Job Access, that will come and assess you in a workplace and help recommend some of those things. That's how I learnt and was able to trial a couple of things. And then you can apply for some government funding outside of NDIS for that. It's slow. There's time that it takes, but it was really helpful to just have a bit of navigation. I often felt like just there was a barrier to understanding assistive technology. I remember saying to somebody, I feel like there's this big pool of all these tools that people can have to live independent lives as someone with a disability, and there's a big old fence and I can't work out how to get over it or where the gate is. And so finding different pathways to that and getting that support took me, a bit of time, probably 6 months to a year, but it has been very worth it to have found my way through that fence and into the pool of, there's tons of things that help people with disability have some independence back.
It's great that you've been able to get to that space, and I'm sure it's reduced your stress levels a lot, which is great. And I think what you touched on there again was just that variance of experience with people with low vision. So like we talk about a lot on this podcast, there has to be that constant conversation with your employer about what your needs are, because they vary between person to person, but they also vary within a person's experience. It may change over time. So it's not a one size fits all or a set and forget support framework. It has to be an ongoing conversation. So that's great.
And everyone has access needs. People have children and they need to work different hours depending on the age of that child. That's things that change, and that is really clear. We've come so far in this country with how that might be supported, and I very much appreciate that's not a great experience for lots of parents that I know, but it's interesting that when it comes to something that particularly invisible disabilities or anything else, there's just this knee-jerk to like, well, I need proof, or it has to just be this one thing, and there's just not as much of an understanding of there's change in that, and it's a dynamic situation. It's not just this sort of thing. So it's really interesting, the attitude difference.
So this season we have also sought input from our podcast community about what it's like to live with a non-visible disability or health condition. So one of our wonderful community members has asked, has your disability shaped any strengths that you are proud of?
Oh, thank you, community member. That's a really lovely question. The one I alluded to with the networking that's been a recent one is the strength to kind of approach anyone. I was in a situation where I networked with someone really senior, and I reflected that I've been in situations where sighted friends and colleagues have said, oh, I can't go and talk to them, that's so-and-so. And so they're holding themselves back because they know who that person is. And I don't have that barrier. I don't know who anyone is, so inherently I can talk to anyone. So that's a new one that I've realised is a strength I can tap into. This is a bit of a trope for people, and not everyone's experience with blindness or low vision, but I really do have great hearing. It can be overwhelming at times. It definitely get like audio overload, but it's such a strength to picking up voices. It's a big navigation tool for me, but then it's also like the identification things through hearing. So if we're watching any sort of animated show, I just like pick up really straight away who any actor is, or some of those sorts of things that, out somewhere I like identify music and songs really quickly, or hear those sorts of things. So I think that's a great strength. And then more so sort of the other senses with this sort of progressive condition, more than looking at fine detail. So I'm very perceptive and intuitive through that, like just sort of picking up a sense of a situation or knowing those sorts of things. It's feedback I get that comes through a lot like that. I have strong intuition. The other one is around problem solving and resourcefulness. So I think, and I've heard that come up a lot with other people in the disability community, where you're just very used to figuring out a way forward. But yeah, the resourcefulness is a massive strength that I'm really proud to have. And a quick build I had on this question, I was just thinking, sharing about my disability has really shaped my confidence and that chance to sort of accept myself, the situations, that comes back to the resourcefulness. But there's such a strength in finding a way to share about your disability and owning your story that really just turns the volume up on a lot of strengths that you have. It has allowed me to embrace them a lot more. So to put that back to community members, I think just there is a way to build on those strengths even more through sharing about living with disability and owning your story.
That's great. It's really uplifting to hear all those strengths that you feel you have, because that one sort of sense has been dialed down, the others are sort of dialed up in your case.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And you've got that confidence. I love that example of where you're confident to go into a room and speak to anyone, which some of your colleagues aren't. That must be really empowering.
It is. And I just want to say this is distinctly different from my attitude even just 2 years ago. I could not talk about my having low vision, anything about my disability without being very emotional. It was such a huge barrier to be able to talk about it. And so just want to also put that out there, that I've been the listener in lots of these things, being like, oh God, how do you get there? And so I'm 2 years into this of feeling comfortable talking about it, and it is hard work. I think the year I cried the most in ever was 2024. Like just so much to process and work through and accept, and just still to this day, if I have a conversation about stuff, I was like, I was sharing about this experience I had and I didn't cry. That still to me is a huge metric of progress and success. And I don't feel emotional in this conversation. I feel really excited to be in this conversation. But even just as short as 2 years ago, I just want to put that out there. That was, it is, there's no time like the present. Like you don't have to have always been confident or start out that way. You can start at any time. Just take that one step.
Absolutely. And that's really encouraging for our podcast community to hear. I think that reflects my own journey as well. I don't think I spoke about my condition at all for the first few years and actively tried not to. Sort of gone, I guess, 180 to now sort of talking about it comfortably. But it is a journey and it's not linear either. I think I went through phases of feeling comfortable talking about it and then maybe regressing a little and then sort of pushing forward. So it can be a bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back process, but it's great that you've got to where you are. That's fantastic.
And to you too, James. I really resonate with sometimes you don't want to talk about it. And I've had that advice from my therapist, like, what can you do to just put it down and put down the struggle and not think and not be in spaces that it's glaringly obvious to you that there's things that are disabling, and just find safe spaces to be when you're going through that is important to give yourself a bit of that space when you can.
Absolutely. So you've been a proud sunflower wearer for a few years now, which is fantastic. In what situations and environments do you most wear it, and how does it help you?
Yeah, it's so tied into that 2-year journey of getting confident and wanting, it was almost like a motivator for me. I loved this program and I knew it could help, and so it also motivated me to get more comfortable with it, because I was like, I don't want to put this signal out there if I'm still uncomfortable talking about it. So, that might not work for everyone, but it was a motivator. So that was a big part of starting it. I predominantly use it, I think, like a lot of people, travel, airports and public transport. I've started to do it a little bit more at events. I do use an ID cane, which is a shorter white cane for people with low vision who it's ironically a visual cue to other people, but it's not a mobility cane that needs to touch the ground. It's a shorter one just as this sort of representative. But so sort of using that in combination to sort of feel, it's I get so excited when I notice the symbol, like the Hidden Disability sunflower at events, but yeah, sort of having it there has been really great. And then, the lanyard I find is that bigger signal when I think there's going to be something potentially disabling in that environment, and I most likely want to ask for something or would be open to being approached about, hey, we have such and such, would you like to come this way, like a sunflower entry or those sorts of things. But then to be honest, outside of all of that, I almost always wear a wristband and a pin, because to me it's a sign of pride, and it's this way to signal to other people in the community, like, hey, there's more people with disability in this space than you think there are. I get so excited when I see it in the wild, and have had reactions from other people who just get so excited to see and be like, oh my God, we've got this connection. And with invisible and hidden disabilities, you don't have that. It can be so lonely in this community. But so I often just honestly wear it as like it's the same way people might wear pride flags or other sorts of indicators. So almost always wearing some type of sunflower, and it has infested my wardrobe deeply. I have multiple dresses or earrings and things with sunflowers on them beyond that. So it's taken over my life a little bit in a really positive way.
That's great that you're accessorising with the sunflower. That's fantastic to hear. And I think the pride that you have wearing it, that's great to hear as well. I certainly feel that. And when you see other people wear it, it is uplifting. I think particularly in that event scenario, there are some events that people with non-visible disabilities or health conditions just can't attend unless they are sunflower friendly. And I know that when people see that symbol and know that that event is a sunflower member, it opens that door to be able to be part of that event, which is incredibly empowering.
Yeah. I saw in the footage for Mardi Gras 2026, they had like a big sunflower projected live, and they were showing the route, and they had sort of at the start and the end, and I was with friends going, is that like the sunflower? Like, is that what that is? And being so floored and excited that was represented there, and just the building on the inclusivity of Mardi Gras. It's so powerful, and I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Well, I went to Mardi Gras, and
amazing.
It was exciting to have that accessibility. I think they have 3 areas with accessible seating, which is great. It just makes an event accessible for people, which otherwise wouldn't be.
Yeah, and I haven't gone for a number of years for that kind of reason, so I might put it on my 2027 bucket list.
Absolutely. So you've become a real champion for inclusion and the Sunflower in your current role as an organisational development lead in a large organisation. So what does your role involve, and what are some of the measures and initiatives that you're doing in the workplace to assist people with low vision and other people with invisible disabilities and health conditions?
It's so important to talk about it at work, and I've lived through so many poor workplace experience. I think it's really helpful to have a mix of lived experience and to connect with other people on that. OD, as you said, organisational development, and HR, all about enabling a business through people, their biggest, most important sort of asset. So all those experiences, big and small, are so important to make sure that they're inclusive. So one of the main things was bringing Hidden Disability Sunflower into our workplace, so chipping away at making sure we've got a full, we sort of can be really sunflower friendly. What that looks like. It's been a really nice gateway to a number of other conversations about inclusion or people taking that disability journey and shaping towards how else can we, what else can we do? Really making sure we're listening to the communities of people with health conditions, invisible disabilities. I know as well a lot of the neurodivergent community connect with wearing the sunflower and bringing something hidden about who they are to the surface. So it's really opening more conversations. So it's great to be bringing that into the workplace. I'm also, I think I've touched on this a little bit lightly, very passionate about adjustments in the workplace and what access needs are, the perception of them, ensuring that there's equitable access to whatever people need to make them work. There's such a perception that workplace adjustments are just for people with disability, and that they're not. They're a human right to dignified work environment. I think a lot about some of the examples of reasons people need adjustments, like people going through perimenopause and menopause, they might need a fan to help with temperature fluctuations. They're not required to have medical evidence of that stage of life, and it's sort of a common thing in some workplaces. I appreciate not all. But, the second it's sort of something that's a bit unclear, or I've definitely encountered some of that, like, what is low vision? What even is that? Do you have it? What's your diagnosis? And there's a real focus on needing proof and medical side of things. So I really try to lean towards those conversations. It's difficult. There's a lot of reasons why, like if it's an injury, people do need medical things. There's those sorts of things, but it's just removing it from that bucket and treating it as something different. So, and as we touched on before, when it comes to things like progressive conditions, it might change. There's trial and error that we need to do. A lot of people don't have medical documentation, could be, financial or time barriers to that. Like there's just so much of that needs unpacking. So that's been something I've been trying to get closer to, finding ways to sort of work through that. And by advocating for it, again, as I sort of said earlier, sharing my own story has become a strength of mine. And I think that has also helped people understand. I've had that feedback from colleagues of just how much they've learnt about disability community by me being more open. And so I think that's probably actually one of the things that I'm doing to assist specifically the low vision community is sharing story. I've been really open about it. I've talked publicly. We sort of try to share stories within our workplace on quite a big platforms, and so leading by example and being open and showing people the journey of that. And it's not a like I felt this way one day and this way the next day. All of that I think is something I'm doing to assist other people with low vision and help people know what it is and that they can call themselves disabled too. Anyone else that might be sort of resonate with a lot of these experiences. As you've said, there's a lot that is common across all sorts of hidden disability situations.
Well, it's great that you are turning your disability to a real strength to help other people. That's fantastic. And you've identified some fantastic points there about what can help in the workplace. And obviously there's those physical adjustments, which, as you also said, help everyone, not just people with disabilities. But also I think the conversation starter element of the sunflower is a big one in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Just an environment where people feel comfortable talking about the challenges they have and what needs they have, I think is a real strength of the sunflower and the symbol. And also like your trust, not proof mantra. Definitely support that.
Yeah.
I think if we have more of that in the workplace, it'll go a long way to making people feel comfortable and having more productive, happy workplaces. So that was a great point. So the final question we'll ask all our guests this year is, what is one small change that individuals or organisations could make tomorrow to improve the lives of people living with non-visible disabilities and health conditions?
I think I stole my point in my last answer, but it's trust people. I know we live in a society where it's really hard to trust and believe in things, but start with trust, I think, is a pretty small change. And we offer a lot of people a lot of trust inherently. So I think just remembering that it's a person and trust what they're saying or what they're asking for is quite a small act for people, but has an enormous impact for the person that's asking for something or being vulnerable and sharing. So, yeah, just trust people.
That's fantastic. And I think that's right. Sometimes workplaces seem to design systems around the 1% of people, or probably 0.1% of people who may not do the right thing at the expense of the other 99.9%. So all the forms and the proof requirements are just an impediment to people getting what they need.
Yeah.
Just in case there's somebody who's asking it who doesn't need it. I think 99.9% of the time, if someone asks for something, they need it.
That's it. And we want people to trust us, whether that's the organisation or just you as a person. You expect people to trust you, and so you have to give that back.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show today, Fee. It's been great to hear your disability journey, and I know a lot of people will benefit from it. You've had some fantastic insights there, and thank you for opening up. It really is helping other people.
Thanks so much for having me and inviting me on and letting me give very long answers. It's been really great to talk to you, James.
Thank you for joining us for another Sunflower Conversation. Please keep the conversation going via our website, hdsunflower.com/au, on Facebook at Hidden Disabilities ANZ, on Instagram at Hidden Disabilities_ANZ, and on LinkedIn at Hidden Disabilities Sunflower-Australia and New Zealand. You can also visit our website if your organisation or an organisation you know is interested in becoming a Sunflower member. If you would like to submit a question for one of our guests to answer on a future episode, please direct message us on socials or email us at hdsevents@baileyhouse, that's BAYLEYHOUSE.org.au. Please help, have patience, show kindness to others, and join us again soon, making the invisible visible with the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower.
When some days get a little tough, we'll help you find that sun and lift you up to get you through to your sunflower bloom.
If you'd like to share your sunflower story or conversation, please email conversations@hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. Find out more about us or listen to this recording again by checking out our insights page at hiddendisabilitiesstore.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please help, have patience, and show kindness to others, and join us again soon, making the invisible visible with the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower.